Hey everybody, we are 3 minutes late. Thanks for sticking around. That's me on Zenny time, however you want to say that. But I'm with my longtime friend, and I can say that because okay, I have to say this, folks. And Natalie, your dad is a person that you experience before you meet him. So it's just okay. And I met him. I was sitting next to your mother's brother, Cal UCLA 1986. That's how far back that goes.
Wow.
And the Mike Silver experience was standing up and exhorting on the troops in his famous Go Bears fashion. I'm proud to host Mike and his daughter Natalie and talk about their podcast, Pass It On. And first of all, I want to say welcome to Zenny 62 Live in my new format, thanks to StreamYard and our vlogger Mason Riggs. And talk to me about how your podcast started. What was the genesis of the idea? What was the aha moment where you say, I'm going to do a podcast? Or was that Natalie's idea? Great idea in either case.
First of all, pass it down, and I don't
pass it down. Right, not pass it down.
Want to make sure as we pimp.
Pass it down.
So Zenny, I just, a lot of people have talked to me over the years about a podcast. You should do a podcast, and so it's something that I've always kind of had in the back of my mind and floated around. And honestly, what happened is because of the shelter-in-place directive and the pandemic, Natalie, who graduated from Cal a year ago and normally would be off working somewhere full-time, we were lucky enough to have her in our house, and she is doing some work from home for various endeavors. But, I have great access to her. So I wanted a sidekick, and knowing that I could exploit her labor because she's literally captive in my house. And honestly, like, as you said, you experienced me before you meet me. So I don't know that everyone would be a good sidekick for me. She obviously knows how to keep me in check, but, she's had experience already in her young life with, she's done music, writing, and reporting. She's worked in Washington, D.C. in politics. She has been very active in fights for social justice and racial equality. She's worked with Cal football on recruiting and kind of seeing college athletics. So she actually brings a wide breadth of experience, to the table. And I also love the idea that football people, one of my skills, I think, has been not overreaching in terms of presenting myself as overly knowledgeable about football, even though, deep inside, I think I know a lot. But I'm honest. I will say to these guys, like, I don't know what defense you're talking about. Could you draw that up? So, I guess my only advice to you was don't get bogged down by the football intricacies, because I think there's something to be said for admitting you don't know, asking in an open-hearted way, like, hey, can you? So I've just told her that we haven't had too many football guests, and the first one, Cam Jordan, and his father, Steve, we basically talked racial injustice and all that. But when it comes to football, I want you to be able to say, like she just did with Kyle Rudolph, our most recent guest, hey, I think this is what a tight end does.
I hammed that up a little bit.
Yeah, but I want her to come in without, knowing every intricacy about the nuts and bolts of football, because I think it'll be cool for content.
Yeah, which I definitely don't. I also am a huge football fan and college football fan, but I do not follow the NFL or care about it at all.
Yeah, and the only other thing is she's done a lot of transcribing for me, again, in this dead period where I can exploit her labor. And so she's heard a lot of my longer interviews with some really, really smart people. So I'm hoping you picked up a few things here or there.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me, in listening to the podcast, there's interpersonal relationships you also have that come out. I mean, most notably with Steve Kerr, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious. And talk about how that came about.
Well, the other part about having my daughter on the podcast is, I think we are kind of looking for interactions that, either are multi-generational or intrafamilial or just super familiar. That's appealing to us. And that's, I think you'll see that as the weeks go on with our guests. But, Steve and Maddie were natural first guests for us because, so I grew up with Steve in LA back when I was known as the 49er fan and the Warrior fan and the A's fan. I was the only guy in my school, as far as I knew, who rooted for all the NorCal teams, and they usually lost, and I got clowned by everybody, including Steve. He was my writing partner at the school paper at the Palisades High School for the Tide Line. We wrote a column called The Riptide, and so it took a long time for the world to align, but he ended up coaching the team that I grew up loving, that he clowned me for, to 3 championships at great heights. And so that's been nice. But more important, Steve and his wife, Margot, have a terrific family. They have 3 kids. And, watching the father and husband he's become, it has just been the biggest thrill for me. Just a fantastic person on all fronts. And so when Natalie was deciding where to go to college, we had propagandized you, my wife Leslie and I, for years. We're both Cal graduates, but she was really giving it a pure, run as to what she wanted to choose. And Steve's wife Margot suggested that their daughter Maddie, who was a freshman volleyball player at the time, would be a good person for Natalie to hang out with. And so I took her down to Berkeley one night. All I know is the next morning, she'd been pretty indecisive. The next morning, she announced at the breakfast table that she was going to be a Bear. So,
well, one of the main things keeping me from choosing Cal right off the bat is my high school experience was just so like school, homework, like not fun at all. And so I just didn't want to go to a school with a bunch of robots and like, okay, cool, I got in, but did I get in because I was just like grinding 24/7?
Yes.
So then I go to Maddie and she was just like, dude, I'm not smart and I have
yeah.
I was like, okay.
Maddie has this incredibly self-effacing way, like Steve.
Were you intimidated by the big courses? Here's why I asked, because I met your dad when I was a grad student. And there's a woman I used to hang out with, Kirsten, and I thought Lou Buscaglia was going to speak at this event. And she goes, oh, yeah, it's here. And it turned out to be the physical sciences lecture hall, right? And it's like 500 people. And I said, wow, all this for Buscaglia? And she goes, Leo Buscaglia is not here. And I said, you told me. And I'm thinking, how do I get out of here? Was that, I'm just curious. How did you adjust?
That was the rotating stage, right? PSL was the stage that rotated.
Yeah.
For me, I saw the big classes as, oh, cool, like I can text and like watch.
But you did the conga line for Robert Reich and Kiss the Ring at the end of his class, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. But just a little house cleaning. I just want to say, PJ, he calls himself Rocky Mountain, Las Vegas Raiders fan, PJ 5124. I don't know what the 5124 is, but PJ, glad you're here. Thanks. You know the drill. You have any questions, just type them in, and I'll ask them if they're appropriate. Thank you for or not. Right. We'll have fun with that one.
What if our answers are inappropriate? Then we
we have a lot of things around on my channel, so the breadth of what you can do is pretty wide. I mean, I don't know that there's a bound. Well, if there is, it's algorithmically determined. So I got computer help. It's cool. How do you get your everybody says, how do you get your guests? I mean, do you just call on the cell phone and say, hey, I want you to come on my show? They go, oh yeah. I mean,
so far, Natalie, I would try to exploit her labor more and make her the booker, but so far it's been me texting. And we have a long list of people that we think would be good and pairings a lot of times. But, we've also, we've tried to be situation specific. So we started with Steve and Maddie, and then, George Floyd happened, and we were like, whoa. So we obviously have to talk about these very important things. Cam Jordan is a guy that, one of the guys, stars in the NFL that I respect the most, who's just a really smart guy. And then he has, his father, Steve, who I know was a 6-time Pro Bowler for the Vikings in the 80s and really, really smart guy. Went to Brown, so maybe not quite as smart as the Cal people, but hey, and so they were phenomenal. And then we came right back with COVID, and Zenny, we happened to be lucky enough to know two of our fellow Cal era people, Dr. Gregory Hune and Dr. AJ Narula, who are at the forefront of the fight for treatment and all of it. So,
will we get a free vaccine?
Hopefully we all do, first of all.
I mean, first of all, we could probably just go to Canada and get it free, since they have a much more evolved system of socialized medicine. Yeah, I mean, those guys were really, really good. They that was not a hard one to prepare for, because we literally just asked them every question we ask all the time, and things that I asked them off broadcast, anyway. And it was really easy, because we just kept saying, okay, what about contact tracing, and I think we'll probably have to have them on again, because this changes so quickly. But so Zenny, I mean, we just did our 10th episode, which posts next week, and that'll be with Corbin Reef, who just wrote the biography of Chris Cornell, the late Soundgarden and Audioslave singer. That's coming out next week. We had
he has a Bond. He did Casino Royale, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I do not know about. I think that might be a different guy, but anyway, so that has nothing to do with sports. Interestingly, like you would think, 10 episodes, you'd think that with me covering pro football, it would be very football heavy. But we had Kyle Rudolph of the Vikings. But other than that, we had Uncle Luke, the great Luther Campbell, who has sports ties, but I've known him for 20 plus years, and is one of my heroes as a Two Live Crew legend. And
he did your music, right?
Yeah, and so we were really lucky to have him on. And so we're kind of just trying to come up with we
want to make it accessible for people like me who don't care.
Yeah, we want the vibe to be good, and we're trying to keep it somewhat topical. So it'll be interesting, though, as I jump into the season. Normally I'd be hitting the road pretty heavy. I might just bring a microphone and stick it in Russell Wilson's face and get her on the phone. The access is going to be obviously very different this year because of COVID. So
by the way, I would try to help with booking, but I don't think we want to talk about like moshing and staying out till 5 a.m. and living on a $5 a day budget. We
have an interesting challenge, though, because there's one star NFL player whose brother is a TikTok star, I'm told. Yes. And she's skeptical that I could get the brother possibly, in there's theory.
There's no way you're getting Jackson.
I mean, she's acting like it would be harder to get Jackson Mahomes than Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, Zenny, you know that Lee Steinberg is Patrick Mahomes' agent, our old friend. And so, I may have to, just to get any cred in my household, I may have to investigate that possibility.
Hey, just ask. Because you never know. I mean, it happens. But also, this is your own private Idaho, because you spent most of your media, basically under somebody else's roof, if you will, right? Yeah. But this is your own house. It's a cool feeling, huh?
Yeah. It's a little, it's a world I don't understand real well. And I'm, I should have a longer talk with you about it, because like what I consider buzz isn't necessarily numbers, isn't necessarily the right algorithm, right? So what I want is for people to hear it and talk about it and care about it. I'll pimp it relentlessly on social media, but what's popping on Twitter isn't necessarily, an algorithm that transfers to, quantifiable, reach sometimes. And
we don't really even see the numbers, because we have a team that deals with the tech side of it. So we've just been kind of doing this blindly and doing what feels good.
If I could say, first of all, I'll get to Godfather Media's Joseph Amador. So we have two of our vloggers. Hey, Natalie, if you ever want to vlog, doors open. We pay. Won't get rich yet, but I got a budget, so love to have.
He's already better than I am.
Yeah, seriously, I'm in.
Cool. And, but I always want to say, I'm going to get this from Joseph Amadur's Godfather Media. He says to Natalie, he says, "Do you want to?"
I thought I am in frame. We are in frame.
It's because you split the screen. Yeah. There you go.
Are we not in frame? Oh my god! This whole time I thought we were.
We were looking at the one on the. Anyway, we're pro.
You were offset, and I kind of thought maybe it was part of your plan. So I was like, I'll go with it.
What's weird is Natalie is actually 6'9", and so she's slouched down to not tower over.
That's so funny. See, we don't even like the tech side of it is.
I don't think I like the backlighting either. I think anyway. So and I guess my other thing is like I'm super competitive, right? So I want this to kill by whatever measure that is. So, unless I'm getting hit over the head by the reach of it, which, again, is an area that we don't really keep track of or understand, part of me is just really angry that man, everybody should be talking about us and Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah.
What the heck?
What you got to do though is you have to put your name in each title so it comes up in search easily. If you notice what I did, I put your names in there, right? As opposed to a lot of people do this. You're not alone. They'll have what they think is a pithy title, but search online is a business of people wanting to see where you're doing and about you. So they're going to search you. So that's how you do it. And then they're going to pick up what you're talking about, right? So that's, I'm happy to throw in with that, but that's what I've learned because
And then you're going to be in frame.
Yeah.
I need to be in front because I spend most of my time coding and not getting any sleep. But the bottom line is what you have here that you brought is like Brandi Chastain, who I think is absolutely incredible. Although there was that one time that I ran into her CS and she thought I was nuts, but that's okay. But
she's not the only one.
Yeah. But what's her future now that what's next for her?
Great question. So Brandi's someone that it was really cool to do episodes with her and her brother Chad, who I've come very close with over the years. But
and I sacked him.
You did sack him.
In Little Game?
In his MVP era, Zeddy did sack him. Zeddy sacks everybody. So, Brandi, I've known her for a long, long time. And then since when Natalie was little, back when the San Jose Cyber Rays were playing in the wake of the 99 World Cup triumph, and that was the first incarnation of the 3 tries at a big-time U.S. professional league for women. And Brandi would take Natalie, into the team meetings and let her kick the ball around before the game when she was 5, 6 years old, and then kept up over the years and worked with her heading into her high school career and all that. And so I always thought, Natalie was really shy growing, early on and didn't talk a lot and didn't carry herself with a ton of swag. But on the soccer field from the beginning, she kind of had an arrogance about her, and she was really good, but she also kind of acted like I'm important. And I always felt that's because Brandi and Julie Foudy and those legends she knew on some level, like these star players were, cared about her and were, talking to her. And so Brandi's just someone who, if you don't know her, she comes off, I think, as hokey and, contrived. And then once you know her, you're like, no, she just loves soccer that
so
much.
Sincere. And that's why it was funny to have Chad there, because he's so funny and he's the perfect person to kind of bring her out. Yeah.
And so she's, her husband, Jerry Smith, is one of the great soccer coaches in U.S. history. He still coaches Santa Clara, that incredible, program that was, of course, featured in Bend It Like Beckham. That was the prize. She was going to go to Santa
I never
Clara.
even made that connection because I saw that when I was so young.
Yeah, and so Brandi's a volunteer assistant there. She's actually the head coach at Bellarmine High, which is where your friend Bill Barry, a.k.a. Bill Doberry, he went to Bellarmine. It's an all-boys Catholic school in San Jose. she's coaching the boys there, and I think they won their first section title her first year. Not surprised, and she's still real involved in the effort to make women's soccer, as big as it can be in the U.S. and internationally. So, and she's a mother. She's a grandmother actually, because her and Jerry's son Cameron from Jerry's first marriage has a granddaughter. Wow. Yeah. So, and she's her son Jaden, who we've known.
Now I'm dating.
Yeah, I watched him once for hours.
He's 14,
He's
and
hilarious.
apparently her son Jaden is going to play football, but not the kind of football that Brandi loves, the kind of football that I cover. So that is a whole at Bellarmine. So that'll be a very interesting endeavor.
What position?
We asked. I was lobbying for kicker. It sounded like. Oh yeah, they were saying he wants to be Michael Strahan.
I don't even know what Michael. Strahan does,
Michael Strahan was a defensive end, but he basically played the entire defensive line. He played every position on the defensive line from one spot. He was extraordinary.
Hey, how are you guys during the pandemic?
Are we doing during the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think somebody has an echo on there, but
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's good. But amazing. Let's say how you're doing during the pandemic. How, just that. Because you're sheltered. People, like my sleep is irregular at times. That sort of thing. The days pass by, and sometimes you think, "What day is it?"
Her sleep was pretty regular last night. I had to wake her up right before this podcast.
I'm like drinking my caffeine right now. I think obviously relative to the rest of the country and world, we have it very good. We live in a place where people are very compliant, and that makes me feel a lot better. Obviously, it's hard, and I don't know. We've been taking it really seriously. We've been hunkering down and wearing masks everywhere and really limiting our activity, but we're okay.
I mean, honestly, Zenny, for me and for Leslie, it's, we have our frustrations, but it's not, debilitating. What's been hardest for me is watching our kids go through it. And first thing is, like, I know, and I don't even, this is not hyperbole, I know that I'm driving her and her younger brothers insane every single day. And I'm not trying to. I mean, come on, they're 24, 21, and 18. And they're home every day with their parents, and we're well-meaning, but I'm very kind of sensitive to the fact that it's a lot. And watching, she's been a trooper, but it's definitely impacted her job search and her career decisions so far. Greg is back in Southern California now, and hopefully going to college, depending on how things going, for his senior year. But he's definitely had his college reality interrupted, and that's been hard. And then the hardest for me has been her brother Robbie, who his high school senior year got blown up, cross season, prom, graduation, and now is supposed to start in college at UCSB this coming fall, but that's all up in the air. So,
and just had a birthday. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so he and Greg hopefully can be in school together. But it just, I as Natalie said very well, and my kids are all great. We have it really good. It's way bigger than all of us, and I don't want to say that we're living a sob story compared to obviously 140,000 plus people have lost their lives.
No, now you've also got a great dad. I think your mom could personally attest to this. I met some of the worst women in the world, but fortunately I didn't marry them. So it was, your mom was a great counselor to me over the years.
You are an incredible son, Zenny. How is your mom holding up?
Oh, she's fantastic. She's in the other room, and I saw my place back there. And by the way, Godfather has another question. He goes, what's the relationship between Two Live Crew and the Silvers, and was there a specific reason why, they interviewed Two Live Crew?
I think I have an aid here. So, so this is a story I did when I worked at Sports Illustrated, and I worked. Yeah, it's Ice Cube in a Laker uniform and Shaq.
I remember that one. I remember that. You know what? That's what I was going to ask you. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and this is May 1989. So I worked at SI for 13 years, and one of my vanity projects that they gave me about 2 years to compile and report was the intersection of sports, hip hop, and rock, and
exactly
all the crossovers. And in the course of doing that, early on, Luther Campbell had been, a hero of mine. It was the first time I heard rap be so explicit, and I started to get it. Okay, rap is fun. Like, a lot of my, Zeddy, a lot of my friends were just like, rap sucks, rock and roll, baby. And I kind of like
His friends were white.
Yeah, white people. And it was like, but then I kind of like, in college, I kind of start, Run DMC, they're pretty funny. Public Enemy's really good. Then I heard Two Live Crew, and I was like, okay, this is fun. And then I started hanging out with athletes, and of course, I got the full education. So Luther Campbell had been someone who was a hero of mine. He got arrested on stage. Thank you. Free speech, and then he became this like sugar daddy for the University of Miami. And what I loved was that right before I interviewed him, he had said Miami had this great run, and he helped make the program big and sexy. And then they were going to have a quarterback competition between a black player that he thought was in line to get the job and a white player who maybe was coming in from the outside and hadn't paid his dues. And Luke said publicly, if they don't give it to the black player, I'm going to give Miami the death penalty. In other words, I'm going to tell everybody everything I know, and it'll put them on they'll get in so much trouble. The NCAA will give the program the death penalty and kill the program. So I was like, okay, this guy's awesome. So I got a hold of him and said, hey, can I come hang out? And he's like, yeah, come to Miami. And so we spent about 3 days together, and he turned out to be even sicker and funnier in person than I expected, and for some stupid reason like me. And then we stayed really good friends, and then the crossover between us, he's so immersed in the sports world. And so even the Vikings Love Boat scandal, when I was investigating that, Luke had some intel on that. The Ray Lewis trial, he had some intel on the people involved in that. And so Natalie, as she continued her musical education, and she's got a better, a wider appreciation of music than I do. She was especially excited by the concept of the song "Fuck Martinez."
Yes. Especially, coming from Berkeley, like my first year at Cal was the 50th anniversary of the free speech movement. So we kind of revered him as a class. I took a seminar on that. And yeah, just the best intersection of music and sports and politics and social movements. And then I also hear stories about Luke and my dad and Jeff Darlington at Super Bowl parties, and I'm blown away.
At our Super Bowl party this year, the one I co-hosted with Jeff Darlington and Carissa Thompson, Luke and Warren Sapp. Luke had us on stage singing, "Hey, we want some bleep." I'll bleep that one out after the F-bomb. And F. Martinez is near and dear to my heart because he was arrested on stage for obscenity. First time a federal court had ever ruled that an album was obscene.
Yeah, when you see explicit titles on albums now, that's because of Luke.
And so the governor of Florida at the time, his last name was Martinez, and the DA who pushed this through, his last name was Navarro, and he was arrested on stage after a performance in Broward County. When he got bailed out, they went straight to the recording studio and recorded F. Martinez, and it's F. Navarro, and then goes on to describe the explicit acts that the wife of Martinez likes to perform on people. And so that was his answer to the people who got him locked up for obscenity. But the great thing is they went and found someone whose last name was Martinez and someone whose last name was Navarro, other people, to sign something saying, oh, no, this is about us. So that prevented any civil litigation. And then he won in the Supreme Court. So all was well that ended well.
Hey, quick check. Want to go on until the top of the hour? Can you do that?
Well, yeah, we're happy to hang with you.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Because I want to ask you, is it possible to get this man on your show, Dennis Rodman?
I think
this is a dream of mine. He does have when you talk to him on the phone, he does end the conversation in an unconventional way.
Yeah, so there's a photo in Natalie's room where Natalie is 8 months old, and we're right outside the Bulls locker room in Chicago, and I'm holding her, and Dennis is handing her a beer, jokingly, and she's grabbing at the gold sequins on his, crazy top. And, Dennis and I met in 1995, and I did that crazy SI story that you showed and ended up doing a book with him. And he had a daughter at the time, Alexis, his first kid, and I had a daughter. And we talked a lot about daughters, and, he's well aware of Natalie's, presence. And so one day when you were, I think in junior high or so, we were driving somewhere, and Dennis called me out of the blue. And I think we put it on speaker, and he wanted to talk to Natalie, and we had this very long, funny conversation, and then it just ended abruptly. He hung up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." That's how Dennis ends phone conversations. He never says goodbye. He just abruptly decides, "Okay, I've had enough," and it clicks, and then that's the end of the phone call. So. You're right. If we do have
him on a podcast,
honestly, one of the things that's keeping me from wanting to book him yet is there's this old Cheap Trick song called "I Love You, Honey, But I Hate Your Friends," and I consider Dennis a friend for life. I love him, but he also considers two people friends who are not our favorite humans. One is a horrible, evil person who has dictatorial tendencies and wants to stay in power forever, and the other is Kim Jong-un. So, I would like to get past November 3rd, and hopefully on November 4th, 2020, we'll be in a better place, and then we won't have to, talk about that one friend from a position of
Exactly. Did you ever think we'd be in this position? I mean, it's like. Every day it's like, are you kidding me? And it's like it gets worse, and it's absolutely crazy. Hey, Godfather says it would be great for you to interview Ice Cube and his love for the Raiders.
I don't think I'd be able to talk.
Sitting down with Ice Cube back for this story was one of my great thrills, and probably Ice Cube is the rapper that I first made you really. I just pounded it into her psyche. Too Short for sure, and Two Live Crew, and eventually, of course, Tupac and many other greats. But Ice Cube, to me, first of all, he rhymed Bosnia Herzegovina with subpoena. He's a genius. Obviously, the political message is incredible, and he the song Cave Bitch, where he talks about how he won't sleep with anyone other but African-American women. He won't sleep with white women. It's such vivid terminology. Ghetto Bird, why oh why must you zoom through the hood?
Ghetto Vet.
Yeah, Ghetto Vet. Just so, getting to sit down with Ice Cube. There is a great backstory to this. So this ran in 1999, and suffice it to say that my editors at SI, most of them were Ivy League and bow tie wearing, they were not big hip hop fans. And I would put lyrics in my articles, and they would change it from, or I would reference, say Warren G, and they would change it to a gangsta rapper, they just,
it's like
they didn't,
Naira Kane.
Yeah, so I had to fight. When we finally got this in, they thought this was a cool cover concept, but at one point they said, well, instead of Shaq and Cube, maybe we could do a New York-based one with Puffy, or at the time Puff Daddy, and Allen Houston, who at the time was a really good player for the Knicks. And I went crazy, and I said to them, it will not age well. Respect to Puffy as a mogul and a producer. He is absolutely an incredible figure. But the rapper Puffy will tell you himself, he's not a great rapper. He did some passable raps and produced some great songs. But Ice Cube's a legend, right? Legendary writer rapper. And Shaquille is one of the best basketball players of all time, on any list. And Allen Houston was good. But, so I'm glad I won that fight. I fought hard.
I think I can say this now, but I couldn't say it then because I didn't own my own media, but I'm going to say it more often. But you deserve credit for being the first in mainstream media to broadcast the connection that was growing between athletes and entertainers. And I said that then, but I think it bears repeating now.
I appreciate it, and I will say this: it's all in this story. If you ever, if anyone Googles it, "Rock and Roll is Here to Play" is how you find it in SI Vault. But it basically, one of the things that fascinated me that I found in researching this was that this goes back to like the Negro Leagues and the great jazz and blues musicians of that era, specifically in African American culture. There was this great intermingling of these two worlds on the road, and the same themes that the musicians were totally into the athletes and in awe of them, and vice versa. The athletes were like, yeah, whatever, that guy throws a fastball, but I want to see Dizzy Gillespie. I want to. What do you mean? I want to see Satchel Paige. So it really is cool that it has such deep roots.
Yeah.
The guest I want you to see to get on. I want to see Natalie as your guest. I want Natalie to talk about her Cal years. Because there's a lot of stories you have there that I think would just be great to share because there's so much history that is just existing.
Well, we could do a whole episode on the Milo protest.
Yeah, see like that. Did you meet him?
Yeah, guys.
I could tell that story from my perspective, which is one of the most surreal things ever.
Yeah,
I was in Houston for the Super Bowl. And I won't spoil it if we're going to do a whole podcast episode, but let's just say that as the fire in Sproul Plaza raged, I'd been alerted that something was going on in Berkeley. This guy Milo, this horrible right-wing, was going to talk on campus, and I had been alerted that something was going on, and I'm watching CNN, and I'm preparing for a Super Bowl function, and I see the burning, and I'm like, oh, God, I got to call Leslie, and I'm texting her, but, honestly, I've had this discussion with many of my friends. Okay, production value. Nothing got harmed except a little bit of I think it was like a TV camera canister or something.
Piece of metal.
But great production value for CNN. There was a fire, and free speech. Yeah, you know what? He's free to speak, but there's a not in our house factor. That was on Sproul Plaza. The birthplace of the free speech movement, and I'll never forget this, Zenny. I don't know. In 1985, when I was at Cal, they had was it 85?
That was the year I came to grad school.
20th anniversary. Free Speech 64?
It was 1965.
Yeah, so they had the 20-year anniversary of the free speech. They had a huge rally on Sproul Plaza.
No, 1964.
So it was 84. And the late Mario Savio, who, of course, was the famed student activist who was the guy of the free speech movement. He came in 1984, and he spoke to a packed crowd at Sproul Plaza. And I'll never forget his message, which was essentially, you call it the free speech movement, and free speech is great, and we were fighting for that. But what was really happening was we wanted the freedom to set up our tables and talk about civil rights.
It was civil rights.
And the civil rights movement. And his money line was the free speech movement was about civil rights. Don't let anybody tell you any different, which...
Yeah. They were tabling to sign up people to go to, I think, Mississippi to help register Black voters.
Right, and so she ended up taking a whole class in the free speech movement, and you know more about than I do, but I just know that, what's touching to me is that's hallowed ground, right? And so, you have the constitutional right to your freedom of speech, and if you want to come say hate-filled things, you have the right to do it, but we might not have the greatest home court advantage always in football and basketball, but I'm pretty sure our home court advantage on Sproul Plaza, when you're some asshole who wants to say hateful, fascist things, you might not like the response. So I will always ride or die with that. And I know that Natalie was employed at one point as a tour guide, giving tours of the Cal campus.
This is like the lowest moment of my life. We can't keep talking about it.
And she'd go off script sometimes, and she would tend to make sarcastic jokes about the death of free speech, which I wish I could have.
I was the worst employee.
Has Cal changed to a point where, I mean, I sometimes feel this when I'm on campus. It seems like there's this conservative movement that really has nothing to do with Cal, but has been allowed to infiltrate Cal. And I use that term deliberately, infiltrate. Am I right or wrong?
I wouldn't say it's an infiltration. I would say it's true to the essence of free speech, and that's part of what makes the campus so vibrant and so dynamic and so charged at all times. When I decided to go to Cal, like, again, when I was visiting Matty Kerr, maybe before that, because we're on campus all the time, I had this moment because he was talking to some coach or something.
Cal Athletic Hall of Fame committee.
Okay.
We were voting.
And and I was just kind of walking around alone, and I had this moment. I remember it was noon, Campanile bells rang. Everyone started spilling out of their classes, Cornell, Wheeler, Zellerbach even, and I'm just kind of like on Sproul Plaza by Sather Gate, and I'm seeing everything. I'm seeing like nerds high-fiving, basketball players, skateboarders, like
people throwing backpacks,
everything, and like it just felt celebratory and crazy and like just so charged. And so I think that, I mean, yeah, I remember on 420, not that I would know anything about that. I remember on 420, the Berkeley College Republicans set up a tent, like a barbecue, like an anti-vegan. I don't even know why veganism is politicized, but they set up
it's like anti-mask.
Yeah, like why are we politicizing that? But they set up like a barbecue, like an anti-vegan barbecue or whatever, and
that's cool.
That's not cool. Fair. You're preying on stoned people. But having this moment,
I didn't even think about that.
This moment with my friends, that's why they did it. Like, why are they being such assholes right now? And then be like, wait, this is Cal. So
it's a lot better than when they bring out guns and point them at protesters or call it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
but and I would say this as a parent because Zenny, we tend to romanticize Cal in our era, but a lot of times as a parent during her time there, I had to kind of have a reckoning where I was like, it's cooler now, and in many, many ways, it's a better campus, it's a better school. But I would say one thing that we had that maybe they didn't have as good is that, we had affirmative action and we had better diversity.
Absolutely.
And there was this guy, Ward Connerly, who was a UC regent, African-American, who led this charge in the 90s to get rid of affirmative action, and it's just and it's maddening. And I just I was blessed enough to grow up in LA and go to LA Unified, which had a mandatory desegregation order in junior high and high school. My schools were 50-50, and I had the best of both worlds. We had kids voluntarily bust in, so it's easy for me to say. But I grew up with black friends at school from 7th grade on, and thank God. So when I got to Cal, I was like, where are all the black people? Like, this sucks. But compared to now, where there is,
it's bad.
Apparently, they just admitted the most diverse class in a long time.
Well, that happened in indirect proportion to the drop in state money that came, and they made it. Hey, Joseph has something. He says, it is sad that musicians want to be athletes and athletes want to be musicians. I don't know. I disagree with that.
Happy, not sad.
I think it's cool. I think I think our podcast also kind of captures the breadth of like, okay, we talk about music, we talk about sports, we talk about entertainment, politics. I think it is interrelated, and it would be boring if athletes were just like myopic and
exactly
their own thing. I don't know.
Some are, yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for people to relate. Having been around athletes so much, it's hard for people to relate to, what the life they're living and the performance element of it, right? So they can really relate, like, when Sean Payton and Kenny Chesney are hanging out drinking, they've both kind of been in these big stadiums where everyone's watching what they do, more Kenny Chesney, but like, there is a relatability.
There is a relatability.
Yeah. And also I think it's important to remember that, Joseph, that athletes are people who choose to have an extraordinary physical ability and work on it, but they also do something else. Like when I met Lauren Seaton, when I was going out with Lauren at Cal, Natalie, you know how the steps are, and Mike, she ran the steps. She was on the Cal crew team. She ran those at once 22 times without stopping. Think about that. Up and down, okay? But she was also massively brilliant at Japanese and everything else and wound up going over there. So, everybody has their different things. However, he also adds this. He says, no Vaseline to this day the ultimate diss song until it's written.
Yeah. I mean, there are some great diss songs, right? There's Ether and the Takeover with the Nas Jay-Z thing. I'm not a huge as Tupac. I am a massive Tupac fan, as is Natalie. But to me,
I think
that was a little much what he did to Biggie.
When Luke started dissing Kanye, and this was before, by the way, Kanye's little breakdown on Twitter, which
Luke in our podcast dissed Kanye.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, which I mean, yeah, I don't think he was dissing him for his mental illness. I think he was dissing him for his political actions. But as soon as that was over, I told my dad, I was like, you gotta text Luke and tell him to do a Kanye diss track. Like, please, that would be so sick.
Yeah, but No Vaseline's incredible because it captures this great, right? Like, NWA was this organic, incredible, politically explosive thing that still resonates today, as we see in the aftermath of George Floyd and all that. And yet, the money wasn't right for Ice Cube and the management with Jerry Heller. There were issues, and he was the first to, be a maverick and go out on his own. And he kind of just was like, okay, we're going to have it be a break. I still respect you guys. And then Eazy-E took a shot at Ice Cube, and as they portray in the movie, he's like, "You did what?" And No Vaseline is the. And I love that scene in the movie where they're hearing it for the first time, and Eazy-E is aghast, and he's like, "Man, we'll take him down." And the rest of them are like, "It's pretty good, man. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to respond to this so easily." Yeah, incredible.
He says this Berkeley students go to class naked. He's referring to. I don't know that he knows what he's referring to.
I've never seen someone in class naked, but every semester during Dead Week, which is the week before finals, on the Thursday at 8 p.m., which is just like word of mouth info. You can't really Google this. So there's a naked run throughout main stack. It goes into Moffett. I think Doe closes earlier. Yeah. So
what's your fastest time in that?
It's not really a race thing. It's like a party thing. You can wear a mask if you want. You don't have to be fully naked. Yeah. So I've seen a lot of birthday nudity.
Do you realize that you're in somebody's video?
That what?
You realize you're in somebody's video on that? There's like videos on YouTube of that thing.
Yeah. Whatever.
I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want that to be searchable. Yeah, she lived in a co-op, Zenny, for years. So she's. I mean, you probably freak out when people are like fully clothed.
Yeah, we had part of like what we do is we come up with community guidelines, and there are bylaws that are written by members and passed throughout council. We have a council every Sunday. And so it's completely like hyper democratically governed. And so one of the first things that was discussed when I first moved in, I lived there for 3 years, is, consent talks about nudity and like, hey, are we familiar with?
Zenny, remember all those consent talks we got when we walked into parties at Cal? No, I don't either.
The only consent I remember is, hey, where's the beer?
So listen. So in our
no means no.
So in our community guideline that we established was that nudity is okay if you ask the consent of people before you get naked, and full nudity is okay everywhere as long as consent is established. But if you're in the kitchen, there are like health guidelines
pre-COVID.
That we have to.
This is pre-COVID.
Yeah. So if you are in the kitchen naked, you do have to saran wrap your genitals. That was the one thing. Yeah, I had a great time there. A weird ending. Kim Benson, if you're watching this, email me back.
Yeah, hey Kim.
Hey Kim.
Want to make a donation to help out your co-op system.
How do you do that? Wait a minute, how do you do that?
Do what?
Saran wrap how do you do that?
You take this, you make like a little diaper.
Or so you're told. So you heard.
I get the feeling that she's an expert. Excuse me, she's an expert here, right?
We need to have a podcast where I'm the guest and I'll tell you all my crazy college stories.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Hey, as we crash toward a close, hey, you got to get this guy right here in Mick Jagger.
Oh my God! I mean, I did interview Zenny, Roger Daltrey, and Pete Townsend. Here I am with them of the Who, which is, the only thing I could even compare to Mick and Keith at this point. And I did that for NFL Network last fall. That was
a great thing, by the way. Yeah.
I honestly, I don't get nervous around athletes, right? I've interviewed Michael Jordan and so many other great athletes, and most musicians I wouldn't get nervous around. I got a little nervous around them, but I was able to do my job. But Mick
would definitely
the person where
me.
I don't think I could do.
I don't think we could do it.
I might be like, or I'd be like,
do that again.
What's the first what's the first question you would ask Mick?
Will you marry me? Dude, I'm obsessed with Lucas Jagger.
Yeah. My first question I would ask Mick would be like, God, that's a great question. I think I would be like, when you wrote the lyric, "What a drag it is getting old," when you were 25 or whatever you were, what did you think you'd be doing at 75? And I essentially asked Pete and Roger the same thing about the "Hope I Die Before I Get Old" lyric in my generation, which was, so poignant. But I mean, Zenny, I remember in high school in 1981, Greg Haywood and Danny Padone and I rallying to take the bus to the LA Coliseum to go see the Stones, and knowing we had to just find a way to get in that show because they're really old and they might die soon. Like this might be it. And we've told ourselves that every single tour since then. And in fact, we had tickets to go see them in San Diego this May. Luckily, we got all the Natalie's seen them a bunch, but we got Greg and Robbie last year in Santa Clara to a show. We were going to see them in San Diego in May, which hopefully we'll see them in a year or so. But yeah, I mean, by the way, so that show was Stones, Jay Giles, George Thorogood, but the opening act was this unknown.
Jay Giles, rest in peace. Wow.
Right. So there was this unknown young guy, and he came up there, and imagine the crowd at the Stones in 1981 at the LA Coliseum. And this young guy was kind of effeminate, and he was doing this song called "Jack Me Up" and wanted the crowd to go like this along with it, and people didn't like it, and they started throwing beer and he had to leave the stage after 4 songs. And everyone's like, he sucks. Guess what? 6 months later, everyone was like, it was Prince. I was part of a crowd. I mean, I didn't do anything, but I was part of a crowd that threw Prince off the stage, literally, in 1981 because he was too effeminate. 6 months later, we're like, we saw Prince play like 4 songs and threw him off the stage. How dumb, collectively, has there ever been a dumber 90,000 humans till a Trump rally?
Man, they didn't like his music?
Yeah, they didn't like the effeminate dress, the jack me up hand motion, and it was a very heteronormative,
Prince was a different kind of drink,
Yeah, well, I think even all but the worst of the people in that crowd 6 months later would have been like, they understood, because they heard him play guitar or something. We're like, oh, he's a shredder, yeah, among other things. And by the way, he will continue to have some of the most beautiful women you've ever seen, just fawning all over him for life.
Yes, absolutely, and it's wow. Hey, so in closing, folks, because we could do this for hours, it'd be fun. Yeah. But I want to make sure that everybody definitely, more than definitely, visits and.
Oh, you're trying to get down.
Absorbs. Yeah. What I'm doing basically is I'm taking this so that I can put it over to Where is that? Here. And
Pass It Down is on all major platforms, although not YouTube. I'm gonna have to talk to you about that, Zenny, because you are so good at all of that. But you know, any major podcast platform, passitdown.com. We are totally grateful for anyone who listens, rates, reviews, subscribes, shares. There you go. And we're just getting going. But you know, one thing I can do is get some really, really good guests. Our guests will not suck.
We have a master list of all of our dream guests, and I think a lot of them are.
I like that master list.
Yeah.
So we're stoked. We have some good,
and I'm serious about that. Like I was able to steal her at a great slice in time because of a lot of reasons. Some of them, you know, brutal, like COVID. But you know, it is a thrill for me to just have her doing this because I know she's headed for like really, really cool things, and most important, she's headed for things that she will try as hard as anyone I know to try to impact our society positively at a time where, man, it is really scary. And the one thing as a parent, I felt, you know, I didn't do a good job of preparing my kids in 2016 for the possibility that this asshole could possibly win. I just didn't think it was going to really happen. And, you know, I just remember the morning after, you know, she called me and was really upset. And she's like, one of my roommates is an undocumented immigrant. The other one is a Muslim. Like, what do I do? And I was like, hey, you know, now is when you got to take to the streets and fight. And it's been a fucked up 4 years, and you really have, you know, been on the front line. So we appreciate
a living nightmare.
Nightmare.
I'm still on the White House press list, and you know, but we'll talk about that. I don't want
against all odds.
Oh God, yeah, I'm still on. Hey, I want to have you back, but stick around in the background, in the back room, and we talk about, you know, stuff, and because I want to get Natalie on as a YouTuber, and be a great addition, and you can bring your dad in and all that stuff. Hey, folks, we'll be back on Sunday, and if you haven't done so before, shame on you. Bookmark OaklandNewsNow.com, the #1 blog in Oakland. Do you realize we're over 500,000 visitors?
Like I said, Zenny, you went viral. All my friends
Dude,
posting that story.
That's awesome. A, and B, got to have a phone conversation with you so I can figure out how to get our visitors to notice. And by the way, I no longer live in Oakland, but I have so much affection for that city. I think people know that. But and you know, the Raiders, like Mark Davis, Zenny. Did you see that comment where he's like, he said to our friend Vic Tafer, he's like, if they don't let all the fans come to the game, I'm not even going to go, because if the fans can't experience our new stadium, I don't want to be there. I'm like, A, what about the fans of Oakland, dude? And B, guess what? If you don't come to the games, it's because you're scared to get COVID. Stop it.
Well, I think he ought to be concerned about his coffers because of coronavirus, but also the iron workers that worked on the facility have not been paid.
Oh my gosh.
That's at Oakland News Now. It's a story I just wrote. I happened to find the lawsuit online. It was no one, we were trying to keep quiet about it.
Wow, that's Trump-esque.
Good for you.
That is Trump-esque, not paying the workers.
It's horrible. And but folks, I want to end by saying this. Subscribe to the Mike Silver and Natalie Silver podcast, and you know, hey, pass it down, right? So pass it down. All right, stick around, folks. And folks, again, subscribe to Zenny62. Subscribe to Pass It Down. Subscribe. We'll be back. See ya. All right.
Thank you.